Michael Brian Brophy's mother?
Michael Brian Brophy's mother. That sounds extremely Irish, I know. But I am a full-blooded Italian. And I won't let anyone in my family forget that. And I had a devotion to St. Michael, so that was the way that went. And Brian just seemed to fit in with the Brophy name. But when I had a little girl, I named her Amanda. But I'm here on behalf of my son, Michael Brian Brophy. I am a retiree of the Federal Service. I served 39 years myself. My husband did as well on Capitol Hill, working for the Sergeant at Arms. And so before I give the accolades to Dr. Devine here, I want to thank you all for your federal service, because being on the retired side of life, I can look back and see all the wonderful work that federal servants do. So thank you very much, because I know we take a beating over the years, and I just want to thank you for your service. And with that, I'll go ahead with Michael's message. The note says, "Mom, would you mind reading this on my behalf of his retirement luncheon? It's a fairly quick read, and I know you'll do it justice. Thanks." I hope you do. My name is Michael Brophy. I worked as a biological aid intern to Dr. Devine during the summer of 1990. Nearly 20 years have passed since that blistering hot summer, but those 13 weeks with Dr. Devine left me with lasting memories and influential lessons that I carry with me still. Today we celebrate Dr. Devine's long and distinguished service, and I'd like to share 3 short stories about lessons I took away from working under Dr. Devine. The first story is about how working for the USDA taught me more about Irish history than it did about agriculture. It's no surprise to anyone who's known Dr. Devine that he's fully invested in his Irish heritage. Frankly, I think the only reason he selected my application from the pile was because I had a not so common Irish surname, at least not so common in America. There are Brophies all over the place in Ireland. I remember when Dr. Devine called me to tell me the good news that I'd been selected for the internship. He asked me if I knew my Irish surname and about my family background. It wasn't long after starting that Dr. Devine pulled me in, and his 2 other interns, Brian and Stephen, for one of his afternoon history lessons where we learned about the likes of 10th century King Brian Boru, uniter of the Irish people. Dr. Devine's love for Irish history and culture was contagious. He truly modeled a respect and curiosity for family history that left a lasting impression on me. The second story is about hard work and seeing things through to completion. When I applied for the biological aid position in the spring of 1990, I pictured beakers and lab coats, a summer spent in an air-conditioned lab helping unlock the secrets of the soybean genome. My vision couldn't have been further from the truth. The reality was that someone had to raise the soybeans first. That meant lots and lots of time out in the sun and dirt, planting, hoeing, irrigating, hoeing, pollinating, hoeing, and harvesting. Did I mention that I did a lot of hoeing? I also did a lot of cursing under my breath. But the time for lab work came. The last 2 weeks of August, the bulk of the time consisted of 4 to 8 hours out in sweltering summer heat and beating sun on the USDA farm just inside the Beltway off of Cherry Hill Road. I'd arrive at 8 a.m. each day, and Brian and Steve and I would hop in the USDA truck for a short ride over the hill to the farm. The only real highlights of each day were taking the 15-minute water break at the rickety old supply barn and then going back to the lab in the afternoon. When it rained, it was a blessing from heaven because we got to stay in the lab. But ominous clouds and drizzle weren't enough. Unless the rain was coming down good, there was a threat of lightning, you could count on Dr. Devine sending us out to the field. But when you're 17 years old and making $4 an hour as a GS1, hoeing a soybean field, it's hard to see the value of what you're doing. But I trudged through it, sunburn and all. Hoeing a field is a solitary and fairly non-creative activity. But by the end of the summer, I saw the little seeds we've planted grow into a vibrant 2-foot-tall plants. That dusty field was a lush green oasis by September. And Dr. Devine had a new crop of plants and seeds that would support several more years of research that culminated in farmers here and in developing nations. I'm getting upset now because I remember not losing their crops to drought or turning devastating crop diseases into manageable and preventable ones. The final story is about patience and believing in others. I mentioned this moment long ago that we pollinated the plants. You'd think the U.S. government would have devised some high-tech method for pollinating soil. I discovered they did not. The job consisted of a pair of tweezers, a jar of pollen, a magnifying glass, and several weeks of dragging yourself along the ground under soybean plants, individually placing bits of pollen on the flowers. As a biological aid, I had to operate at the macro level, hoeing dirt, and the micro level, pollinating plants. Soon I graduated to other more skilled tasks. On rainy days, Dr. Devine would hand me a pile of research papers to proofread, some his, some those of his colleagues. It was during this time that I learned about the effects of pH on nitrogen fixation of legumes and the order of precedence of footnote symbols. At one point during the summer, Dr. Devine asked me to help write a computer program. And my colleague Brian and I would calculate inheritance traits of certain soybean hybrids. It was a short project, but I felt as though I had graduated. You see, I always loved computers. I spent entire summers teaching myself to program on computers at the local public library. And now I had a real job writing a program for the USDA. Dr. Devine probably doesn't remember that little program, but I do. It was my first paid programming job, and today I own a software company in Redmond, Washington. And with a half a dozen employees developing software for Microsoft. Dr. Devine's patience with me that summer and his belief that I could be trusted with increasingly important tasks meant a lot to me. It taught me self-confidence and to be a self-starter, and is something for which I will always be grateful. Much of the success I enjoy today had its roots in those 13 weeks I spent mentoring under Dr. Devine. I look back fondly on that summer, the young and somewhat aimless teenager who got a chance to work with a brilliant scientist and a patient teacher. Dr. Devine no doubt contributed immeasurably to his field during his career, but probably his most distinguished achievement was the positive effect he had on the trajectory of so many people's lives. Those interns who passed through his doors during his decades of service at the USDA. Dr. Devine, thank you for the memories. Congratulations on your retirement. And as the Irish blessing goes, may the saddest day of your future be no worse than the happiest of your past. Michael,
Isn't that kid a fantastic writer? Now, let's see, Brian Johnson was here at that time. Brian, why don't you come up here? Brian graduated in electrical engineering from the University of Maryland.
Yeah, so I spent the summer with Michael.
Oh, I
Gotta go back.
Nice to meet you.
On the table.
So I was one of the first engineers that Dr. Devine recruited from the University of Maryland. I answered an ad from the paper saying, "Learn while you earn." Right. So first of all, it's amazing that you found that book, Matters. So that the linkage book. So I was there in 1990, and let me just I think fill in just a little bit more of the tapestry of the day in the life of an intern. First of all, when you came to work, and that was as an undergraduate or as a graduate research assistant or as a high school student, the first thing you got was a firm handshake and a welcome to the lab by Dr. Devine, who was very happy to see all of us every day, which was a really wonderful way to start your day working in the lab. And one of the things, I should mention that perhaps Michael remembers the time, it caused him to think about the heat out in the field was we did have a situation that year where there had been very heavy rain just after we had planted, or just around the time the soybean seeds were supposed to sprout. And it created a thick crust across the entire field. And Dr. Devine had been off at a conference or seminar for a day or two, and he came back, and we had not been out to the field to check on the plants. And he said, "Well, we better go out there and we better check." And apparently, the crust was too thick for any of the seeds to break through. So what we did was we took the entire field plan, and we went down every row on our hands and knees with spoons. And we broke the crust over each seed so that those plants would grow. Some of those were crosses made the year before by others, and those needed to grow. And we needed those plants for the research. So perhaps that's one of the things that Michael remembers. But when the day was rainy, sometimes it was too rainy for us to go out to the field. Then the slide carousel came out, and we went down to the seminar room. And Dr. Devine would give us an overview, of past research. I mean, this was a really wonderful opportunity for all of us to learn about how research was done, to learn about how the ideas were formed, and to see the process of the results, to listen to a research scientist explain those results to us. It was also good to see the various configurations of Dr. Devine's facial hair through the years, no beard. He would explain to us when he began growing the beard, when he discovered he had red hair, he had a red beard. Also, towards the end of the slide deck, then you would see the slides of the other students had come through before you, and there would be these group pictures from every year going back all the way through the years, and you would see all the high school students, all of these undergraduate students, and he could point out each student. He could tell you what they were interested in, what their unique talent was, what contribution they had made to the research program, and this was a wonderful way for everybody in the group to also feel that they were contributing to something that was very important, and that they were part of the continuum. And I always remember sitting there and going through those, and I also recognized some people sometimes, and Dr. Devine used to tease me that I recognized almost everybody in Montgomery County in those slides. So, I think personally, I also, in my, I didn't pursue a academic career in agronomy, but I did find that many of the things that we worked on, including linkage, had a strong association with the field that I did choose, which is electrical engineering and communications.